Okay, welcome to Dot Tone Design's color separation tip. So here you've heard me in the past probably mention about file resolution and what I do with Photoshop files. I work at 600 resolution these days, and the reason being is I'm going to show you a good example of that. So attached, like I'm writing an email. Um, In front of you is a vector file. Nice, clean vector artwork. It's editable. And I separate in Photoshop because this is a multicolor job going on dark garments. And I want to make use of a good underbase that transitions into the shirt color back and forth. And so I separate this in Photoshop. There's a lot of colors going on, and I don't really want to focus on the whole artwork because it's customer art. And but this artwork here is very, very small. I'll zoom in down real quick, and so you can see like it's just 3/8 of an inch in height, I believe, almost a half inch. Yeah, 0.35. So once that's prints, it's gonna be not very recognizable. If you pull back and squint your eyes at it, you might kind of get an idea of how rough it's going to look. But when you copy and paste that into Photoshop, a lot of people do so at 300 resolution. So now I'm in Photoshop. And at 300 resolution, that image is going to be really hard to pull colors out and separate. Even though they're like flat areas, it's the edges now are all pixelated because there's an area here when you go to paste in. Let's see, if I was in Illustrator and I selected all and I copied and I jump over into Photoshop and I paste as pixels, it's going to give me this artwork. And before I commit, because if you view down, you'll see that there's like an X through this. And before I commit to that paste, I have an option of pasting in with anti-aliasing on or anti-aliasing turned off. And anti-aliasing, what that does is gives you that soft fuzzy edge, the blur. And the reason for that is for like paper printing and magazine printing and business cards and whatnot. So anti-aliasing gives you a soft edge for a photo so that you don't have that hard jagged edge that is based on the resolution of your printer. So this is based off of 300 resolution in this art file. And that's the jagged bitmap pixels of that resolution. And so if I hit enter, it still looks like that. But if I paste again and then I click on this little button here, so that's the icon. Now it changes, it varies a little bit in position and appearance depending on what version of Photoshop you're using. So it used to actually say anti-aliasing with a little checkbox right here. So now you just got this little hard edge stair step, or you got the fuzzy edge blurred. And I can never tell really unless I'm looking at the artwork here what I've got. So I don't, and what I've got turned on. So that says smooth edges. All right. It says smooth edges, but when I hit enter, it doesn't give me the smooth edges. So really, I'm going to click on that, and it appears that it makes it solid activated. That's representing being activated. So now when I hit enter to commit to the paste, it's rasterizing it and giving you a softer, fuzzier edge. Well, this is what everybody does because I believe the default is anti-aliasing. And when you open up a file, it will be anti-aliased. And so you want to get into your preferences and make sure that when you copy and paste from Illustrator or something or CorelDRAW that you're pasting in my preference, which would be no anti-aliasing. See, I don't want this fuzzy edge because if I do a color pull from this, it's going to recognize this blend right here in the middle. So that does not present good, easy selections. And considering that this artwork would be easy to separate as a vector file in Photoshop, while it's gray, some of these grays run into other grays, and it would be a little harder to pull that out. So I'm going to delete this layer. Can't see my layer because of my window. Bring that up. So I'm going to delete that layer because I've already got this pasted into position. And so this is the anti-aliasing at 300 resolution. Now this is anti-aliasing turned off, and this is the resolution. Now, I can make better color separation pulls out of this. Like if I took the, magic wand tool, or not magic wand, but the eyedropper, and went to select color range and clicked on the red, the reference, it selects pretty much all that red there, that solid red. Makes for a good selection. So I can come in and toy with that in my separations. But it doesn't give me a good line art because the size of this artwork is just too small. It's not that the quality of the 300 resolution pasted in with anti-aliasing turned off. It's not that the quality is bad. It's that this particular artwork is just way too small. But I'm going to try and get the best out of it that I can. And in other areas that are important, like inside here, you'll notice inside the Maltese cross, that's going to be small also. And the type you want as crisp and clean as possible. So working with pixel files, you want to bring it in and work with the best file you can get, right? Well, that is 600 resolution. I'll show you why. Remember how this one looks, all right? And then we come into the next one, and there is 600 resolution. So you can see the difference between the two. Let me pull this over. And see these lines coming in here? They're in here too. That has to do with the piss poor gradient that was used to. It was a manual gradient that was used in the vector file. But I would clean that up later. But you see, with even with anti-aliasing on at 600 resolution, you're going to get a much better opportunity to pull colors out of this and get a good, clean line art. And if not, then you can at least clean some areas up. Now, I pop this in with anti-aliasing turned off, and it gives me this in comparison to that. So again, now I can make good, easy, clean selections. I could even use the magic wand tool and come in here and make good selections. Is everything perfect in line art? No, but it's 3/8 of an inch tall. So we're crying out loud. So I help improve that by taking this line art and select all and copy, and then I'll bring it into channels, And wherever I did that, let's see, I could do a new one just to show you. Paste it in there, not in the right position, but that's because it wasn't merged with a white background. Um, so you can adjust levels and you can burn all this out of there. And now you got something to work with. Well, I can even burn out the darkest gray. Okay, so this is the line art that I'm going to end up with, but it's not as clean as what I would prefer. So me being an artist, I came back in here and I used the brush tool, pull this over to the side, back up, and I made my own line art. There it is. So up against the black background. Now what this is going to do is just going to print better. That's all. It's going to hold all that black line, the color, and kind of trap it in because I've thickened up those lines so that it prints even crisper. So what I did is I didn't use the brush tool. If I use the airbrush tool, then I have to click on the airbrush tool and make sure that I got the hardest edge that I can and start. I'm going to reduce my brush size so you can see it as small as I can. It's only 1 pixel brush size. All right. So I'm painting like apples to apples. But see, the brush here has got that anti-aliasing fuzzy edge to it. So in order for me to burn a good screen that's going to not be broken up a little bit with halftones, I'm going to use the pencil tool, and reduce down. And this is the actual size pixel of the file. You might think that looks big and chunky and ugly. But by the time you get it down and it prints on the shirt, it's going to look like that. Maybe more so like that, you know? So I'm just trying to isolate the colors and get good separations and help it as much as I can. And at 600 resolution, this is really going to work out a lot better. So yeah, I'll take my my brush and I'm just going to use a bright green just so you can see the contrast and turn that off. And I would create a new layer and I could even do it in here and thicken some of these areas up. And I started on computers back in the day when, like in the 80s, late 80s, when the programs that we were using to learn on at art school, I went to the Art Institute in Pittsburgh, and they just got computers in and some graphics programs, and they looked like this. We airbrushed in color, but it was like you're airbrushing in big chunky pixels. So a lot of the art looked like this. And so the resolutions of the programs weren't even that fine at that time back in the day. So, but anyway, I can change that to black just so you get an idea of what I'm doing. And I'll thicken up some areas. Uncheck that. I'll thicken up the areas and come around the outer edge here with the brush tool. And depending on how you're doing this with a mouse or a pen tool, like if you're using a mouse, you can smooth it out a little bit by so if you smooth it out by 30% or 50%, you can see how this helps you give a smoother transition than if you had it down on 0 and you're moving around with the mouse. It recognizes like every little zigzag you do. So it's not as smooth. And sometimes you'll get a little bump in here. So If I'm tracing this, I might pump that up a little bit to 30 or 40. And just follow along the edges. And that's how basically how I thickened up and help keep this in trap so that the black line is actually helping me to keep all these colors in place and not move around onto my white, and especially at this small, because we're literally talking about a 64th and a 32nd of an inch. And colors can shift a 32nd of an inch. And so you're going to get more of a mushy blob here of colors when they print. But then that black coming down last is going to trap that in. So basically, that's what I do is I help support that line art. Now, check out some other areas like the type. So back in here on the type, well, that's pretty crappy looking. Can't even make that out, right? You go back to the vector file and look at that area. And that's nice, crisp, clean artwork, right? Well, that's what we want over here in this art. So if you look at the 600 resolution file, it's much more legible. Oyster Bay, New York. Can't make out what this is over here, but this here is going to print pretty cleanly. You want to give it the best opportunity you can. Now, keep in mind, yes, we're going to put that black screen down on a 300 mesh, and it's a screen mesh, so it's going to not hold all that small, tiny detail. And, your E may be a black blob. Your R is definitely going to be a black blob. That little centerpiece right there is just not going to hold. So on, but in comparison, your tiny detail is coming out so much better. And look at the edges of the type. At 300 resolution, it's a lot more chunkier and a lot more stair-stepped and bitmapped. Here, it's a lot more smoother. Again, 600 resolution. So I just wanted to run over that and give you an idea of what that's going to look like. So if I put this together, combine everything, that's not. This isn't the right file. This is not my final file because this has got chunky stuff in it. But that's why you would use 600 resolution, and you don't need to use 600 all the time. You could use 300 if you don't have a lot of small detail in the artwork. But in this case, this is a good example of why you would want to. All right, I'm done. So that's it. And I'm going to stop recording.